Ignorance is bliss until it isn't, the comfort of not knowing. The saying ignorance is bliss holds true, but only until that ignorance is exposed. Hello, and welcome back to KZ Academy. I'm Misty, a credentialed teacher with over 20 years' experience in second language acquisition, mathematics, and elementary education. Through teaching, coaching, and tutoring, I've dedicated my career to helping students, parents, and educators understand the science behind how we learn. This episode is inspired by posts I have been making since 2018 in online forums, which helped lay the groundwork for what is now known as the science of reading. Many of the key ideas that Emily Hanford later presented as her research were already being discussed and shared by me in these forums before she brought them to a wider audience. It's gratifying to see that the techniques I've been refining for over 20 years are now being embraced across America. Her voice played a crucial role in raising awareness and bringing these ideas into the mainstream. Today's episode is about the saying, ignorance is bliss. It holds true, but only until that ignorance is exposed. Not knowing something rarely seems like a problem until a situation demands that knowledge. When that moment arrives, the realization is often accompanied by embarrassment, frustration, or even anger. As long as we remain unaware of our own ignorance, there's no discomfort, no urgency to grow. But once a gap in knowledge is exposed, especially in public or in high-stakes setting, everything changes. What was once a non-issue suddenly becomes a source of insecurity. People may feel ashamed for not knowing something they believe they should have known. They might blame themselves, the system, or even the person who pointed it out. This reaction is normal. No one enjoys confronting their own limitations, but in that moment of discomfort, a choice emerges. We can acknowledge the gap and take steps to learn, or we can retreat into defensiveness and avoidance. The ease of avoiding learning. In today's world, avoiding learning is easier than ever. Technology offers countless shortcuts that allow us to bypass fundamental skills with minimal effort. Calculators handle even the simplest math problems. Autocorrect fixes our spelling without requiring us to learn the rules. Audiobooks let us absorb stories and information without developing fluent reading skills. While these tools offer convenience and accessibility, they also create a subtle but dangerous illusion, the belief that knowledge itself is optional. As a result, many people remain comfortably unaware of their own gaps in understanding. There's no discomfort because there's no immediate demand for the missing knowledge. But that comfort is fragile. Take a student, for example. As long as they can lean on support like multiple choice options, spell check, or subtle hints from others, they may remain unaware of how much they truly don't know. But that illusion shatters the moment they're asked to demonstrate their knowledge independently, especially during a test. What once seemed like a small gap quickly becomes a significant obstacle. The consequences are real, and worse still, the student suddenly realizes they should have mastered the skill, but never did. That realization can be painful, but it's also powerful. Awareness is the first step towards growth. How they respond to that realization is critical. Some will rise to the challenge, dedicating themselves to the effort required to improve, while others will withdraw into avoidance, frustration, or defiance. This moment defines the trajectory of their learning. Ignorance, once exposed, ceases to be bliss and becomes a source of anxiety. The reality of learning, effort, and consequences. Learning is not a passive process. It requires effort, repetition, and perseverance. Yet somewhere along the way, education has shifted away from structured learning towards the assumption that knowledge will develop naturally through exposure. But mastery does not happen by accident. Reading, writing, and math require instruction, deliberate practice, and repeated reinforcement. The brain does not instantly absorb complex knowledge. It needs time, personal effort, and structured engagement to truly internalize information. That is why skills must be taught and practiced. We do not expect a child to play an instrument simply by being in the presence of a piano, nor do we assume that they will become proficient in a sport just by watching others play. Yet, in education, there has been this growing tendency to assume that children will naturally develop academic skills if simply exposed to enough content. This is a flawed assumption. Mastery requires structured guidance, correction, and willingness to persist through struggle. If students are not taught how to engage in difficult learning, they are deprived the opportunity to develop the resilience and work ethic necessary for long-term success. The consequences of avoiding accountability. Now imagine that same child growing into adulthood, never having been held truly accountable for their learning. The knowledge gap remains, but the safety nets are gone. There are no more teachers to cushion their struggles, no participation awards for job interviews. The world no longer bends to accommodate their ignorance, and the realization hits hard. What they never learned now holds them back. But this outcome should not come as a surprise. They were raised in a system that treated knowledge as optional, effort as negotiable, and failure as something to be blamed on circumstances, rather than owned and worked on as part of personal growth. When accountability is removed in the name of self-direction, and structured learning is replaced with unbounded exploration, students are left to drift, without the discipline, skill, or mindset that they need to move forward. This is what happens when we mistaken freedom for the lack of guidance, when students are told learn at their own pace, but are never taught how to push past what's easy or why it matters to do so. Learning doesn't happen by accident. Skills don't develop through exposure alone, and curiosity, while important, is no substitute for the effort and discipline required for learning. It's about showing up and putting in the work and confronting what they don't know yet before the real world forces them to without mercy. The role of testing when illusion meets reality. The goal of testing is often misunderstood as a way to sort or shame, but in truth, testing is one of the few tools in education that forces a moment of clarity. It strips away the supports and addresses the simple, powerful question, do you really know this? For a student who has coasted by on partial understanding or leaned in on external cues, that moment can be jarring. What once felt like competence may suddenly feel like confusion, but that discomfort isn't failure, it's honest feedback. Tests reveal the difference between exposure and mastery. They show what a student can do on their own without support. And while that may feel harsh, it's essential because life, like a test, rarely offers a word bank, a hint button, or someone nearby to fill in the blanks. Avoiding tests may preserve the illusion of success, but it does nothing to prepare the student for the real world. In fact, it reinforces a dangerous idea that understanding is optional as long as you can get by with help. But help doesn't last a lifetime. When students face independent challenges, they need more than warm memories of collaborative projects. They need real knowledge, real skills, and the kind of confidence that comes only from having done the hard work themselves. Testing, when used purposefully, is not the enemy of learning. It's the mirror that reflects what actually is there. Not to shame, but to sharpen. Not to punish, but to prepare. Because ignorance may feel like bliss until a test comes. Then reality arrives. Practical tips and resources. In upcoming episodes, we'll explore practical strategies for effective reading instruction. But if you're eager to get started now, check out my Learn to Read and Write Teacher's Manuals, Volumes 1 and 2, and the Student Learn to Read and Write Journal. These resources offer a clear, systematic path for teaching letter recognition, phonics, and blending. It's like having your very own step-by-step guide for reading instruction. Now, back to the conclusion. The hard truth about ignorance. As we've explored through this episode, education must evolve to meet the demand of a rapidly changing world. The stakes are high, and the consequences of inaction are even higher. This reflection was sparked by my own thoughts on ignorance and accountability. Fittingly, Aldous Huxley's words appeared on my feed soon after. Reality cannot be ignored except at a price, and the longer the ignorance is persisted in, the higher and more terrible becomes the price that must be paid. Though not written specifically about education, his words speak powerfully to it. In education, as in life, ignoring reality only delays the inevitable reckoning. True learning isn't about avoiding challenges or clinging to outdated methods. It's about confronting difficult truths, grappling with complex ideas, and equipping students with the skills and resilience to engage in the hard work of learning. If we do this right, the price we pay will be one of effort, growth, and transformation rather than regret. Let's choose the path of learning, even when it's hard, because that's the price worth paying. So let's choose the harder path, the one that leads to learning, growth, and real confidence. Because while ignorance may feel like bliss in the moment, true empowerment comes from knowing, doing, and becoming more than we ever were before. It's never too late to learn. And every step we take towards understanding is a step towards a stronger, more capable future. Let's embrace the challenge. Let's choose growth, because that's the path that leads to lasting success. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the fascinating world of education. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode.